This is not a defense piece on Assassin's Creed Shadows. I find it funny that around that game, there's basically two groups. It's like if you talk about Shadows, you don't say anything negative. You maybe say something in its defense or something like, hey, this isn't really that bad, or it's pretty common. People are like, hey, wokey, I don't like this game. And then if you say anything against it, it's like, hey, racist, you need to like this game. I find it very silly that this game is so important to people either way. But Assassin's Creed Shadows has brought up a discussion recently about religion. And this discussion does not matter where you fall on it. You can be the biggest r/atheist chud of all time, or the biggest r/Christianity Chad of all time. I'm just joking. Like, you can think what you want. Essentially, there are officials that are taking appropriate action regarding Assassin's Creed Shadows because it desecrates a shrine in the game. And now Nate and I are talking about it today because I kind of wanted to bring up the fact that while there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of valid criticisms around Shadows and around most modern Assassin's Creed, and Ubisoft in general, it's just kind of become a very frustrating company. This is not new. This is not a new direction for the Assassin's Creed universe to be, at very, very most charitable, extremely skeptical on religion, and at worst, straight up be like, yeah, your savior was a guy using a Shroud of Eden. So this is pretty common, and we'll take a look at some examples of that today, but I do have a question of the day for you, which is, are you or are you not...
r/atheism?
No.
Oh.
Are you saved? No, are you or are you not a believer in a religion who enjoys these games or doesn't? Like, does this affect anything for you? Like, you could be atheist and you can play the games, or you can be a Muslim, or you can be a Christian or whatever and play these games. Does this change anything for you? Because Nate, I think we were taking a look at some of the games, and the first one you pointed out to me was just AC2. Like, the entire crux of the rising action and climax of this game is like, hey, you should probably go kill the Pope.
Yeah, right. And also, even the games following that, like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, you're dealing with, like, the Pope's family.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not exactly kind to the Pope either. Like, I understand the character in real life that Rodrigo Borgia was based off of was also kind of corrupt and not a... kind of a dirty Pope. But...
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of, I don't know, historical murmurs and works that kind of point to the fact that he probably essayed his own niece, for example. He was just not a great guy.
They're not kind about that. They're not, holding back on any of that stuff in the game. Like, basically, Rodrigo's just a grapist.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like a power-hungry grapist that murders people, and that's it.
Well,
and you go and beat him up, like, literally beat him up in the game.
He's murdered in Brotherhood?
Yeah. So it's like, okay.
And well, in Assassin's Creed 2, I would say especially, because, Brotherhood, I sometimes actually call it 3, because Brotherhood's the third main entry, but Brotherhood, it focuses, like you said, on his family, who are very bad people, and they use the papal office for power.
Mm-hmm.
Really, Rodrigo, he goes into this religion, into Catholicism and Christianity, in order to use it to gain access to a vault of the Isu.
Right.
In the Vatican, right?
Mm-hmm.
And essentially the climax of that game is going to Rome and fighting your way past and probably killing guards there who are just doing their job to protect Catholicism, Christianity, whatever, and then attempting to murder the Pope. Yeah. And that guy was a bad guy, right? I find it interesting because there's also things throughout the series, like, for example, and I come at this from someone who actually believes in Jesus Christ. I'm not necessarily a great Christian. I don't talk about it all the time. But, like, to me, that was, or is my religion. And for me, I see that and I just think, yeah, that was a bad guy. Yeah. Or, for example, in this, there's a lot of information about how Jesus himself was a man who was someone who used a Shroud of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to believe that, like, Yahweh exists, the God of the Jewish people, who's also the God in Christianity, you can believe that. If you want to believe Yahweh exists in Assassin's Creed, you can believe that all you want. They don't really necessarily say, yeah, and Yahweh, he wasn't real. But they don't ever say he was. And in fact, most of the time they talk about Christianity is like, actually, this was an Isu artifact. Actually, that didn't happen. Actually, and or this was unconfirmed. And then with Islam, they completely avoid it. I think they didn't want to face the South Park punishment, where I think Christianity is kind of seen as like an easy target, because it's like, well, they're not going to do anything. But then there's a lot of religions where if you say something, people are like, hey, knock it off.
Right.
And to me, I kind of find it interesting that this feels like one of those situations where it's somehow okay if certain religions and certain topics are up for criticism or up for disapproval or up for whatever in this series, but then others aren't.
Well, and it's not even just Christianity that's been hit in the series either. You know, there's plenty of religions that they've delved into in Assassin's Creed. Like, for example, in the RPGs, even like dead religions like Norse mythology and Greek mythology, they basically just said, yeah, all those people that they thought were gods were just Isus.
Mm-hmm.
And human beings didn't really understand them. They just saw their technology that they were using, and they created this imagery that they were these big gods. But they were just Isu using, like, computers and stuff. So it's like... And that's basically what they do with just religious characters in general. Like Adam and Eve, for example, were just Isu, basically, that escaped.
Well, they were
not Isu. They're first civilization humans that basically just escaped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jesus, they have a mentioning of him using, like, the Shroud of Eden, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
But he basically got crucified and stuff, so he existed in the world. Even in Assassin's Creed 3, they go into a little bit of Native American religion, where Connor basically goes on a spiritual journey and discovers his next course of action in life, where he has to find Achilles and all this stuff. And it's seen as like this Isu messaging to him, where he goes to the clan mother and whatever. But anyway, she's just using like the Apple of Eden, and also like a Native American, I don't even know what the name of it.
Some type of medicinal herb, because it was burned and...
Yeah, to kind of create this hallucination for him to go into.
The only one I know of is peyote, and I don't know if it was that. It was just some kind of medicinal herb used to evoke the response. And essentially, I believe even when he's spoken to in that journey, they basically say, yeah, we're showing it through you because we're showing you it in this form because this is the form your mind can comprehend.
Yeah.
The spirit journey through like the animal journey. Right. It's essentially like, oh, you are conditioned to understand through this form, so we'll speak to you as if it's spirit animals and as if it's a spiritual journey. But in that way, couldn't you also just say, yeah, Assassin's Creed attacked Native American religions? There are still plenty of people who believe in all of those things, from animal guides and spirit guides to, you know, the religious principles of whatever their tribal heritage was. But I don't see them saying that this threatened their religion. This is something I don't understand with some religions, and I know we can get into this a little bit, and you have some examples in real life because, you know, you've worked in history and we even visited some places, but I feel like there's some religions that are very, very touchy, and some beliefs that are very, very sensitive about any kind of criticism or even tackling imagery. And while I sympathize in terms of, okay, I get this matters to you, and I'm not trying to say it shouldn't, I also look at this and I say, well, these things that are sacred to me have been talked about or have been used, and I'm okay. Yeah. And I don't understand why people don't understand that this is fiction. You know, it's not even necessarily disrespectful fiction. If it was like, now press X to attack Christ as Kratos. Like, imagine the next God of War was like, and now you will behead Jesus of Nazareth. I could say, okay, yeah, it's fiction, but like, this is a little classless.
Yeah.
This is a little tasteless. Or it's like, and now expose the prophet Muhammad for X, Y, and Z. I'd be like, okay, why are we doing this? Like, this is pretty far. This matters to people. Why are we doing this? It's like, now it's time to put Buddhism on trial. No, I understand, but to me, that's not the way they do it. I mean, they can be pretty heavy-handed. They can be pretty, not holding back punches on criticism, but it's not exactly like mash X to attack Jesus or mash X to,
Right.
destroy the prophet or anything like this. Crazy.
Well, and also, from my understanding of this article, which maybe I'm just not getting it, I guess that's possible.
White boy.
I know. From my understanding of this article is there was a video that came out, which I saw a while ago, of someone just kind of like free roaming through the game, and they went into this shrine and basically just hit things and destroyed benches and pots and stuff like that. And at least from my understanding, this is kind of where this is coming from, where they're offended that you can go into this shrine and basically desecrate it, essentially. But my thing is just like, you can do this anywhere in the game. Like, that's just part of RPGs, is going around destroying things. So would it really make sense to be like, okay, this one specific shrine you can't?
Well, isn't it also an unholy act to murder men in the Vatican?
Well, yeah.
Because as Ezio, you fight people in the Vatican and kill them.
Well, and also it also seems to me as if they're like workers or people who are somehow involved with this specific shrine are angry about this, and they're like, we're going to take appropriate action. If they would have contacted us, we would have refused to have this be an option. And it's just like, my thing is just, this is going to sound mean, but like, what makes that one specific shrine...
Well, what makes it exempt?
What makes it exempt from the gameplay of the rest of the game being the way it is? Like if I walk into a park in Assassin's Creed Shadows and destroy a bench, if I walk into a house and destroy a bed, what's the difference between that stuff and walking into like a shrine and destroying a bench? It's all part of the same game. It's just a thing that you do in the game. It's a feature. And it's been a feature for like 4 games now.
Well, you're being even more charitable than me, because I think my stance is, what makes specific religions and spiritual beliefs separate? Is it just because it's yours? That's my question. And I say this also to someone who's Catholic, who got mad at the Pope thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone who is Native American, who got mad at Assassin's Creed 3, but they're okay with the other ones. I know that there are shades of gray to things, so a lot of times if you say it's either all okay or none of it is, that doesn't always apply to things. But when it comes to criticism of interaction with and a history of not being charitable to religions, even down to things like Bassam, in Assassin's Creed Mirage, the only reason no one's complaining about that is because while there probably are a couple out there of people who worship the Greek and Roman pantheons, there's probably not many. So it's a small, very small group. To me, it's not like you can't care about these things. It's not that they can't matter to you, but I do kind of wonder if people are missing the priorities on criticisms around this series, where I'm looking at things happening and I'm seeing Ubisoft doubling down on games as a service. And they literally said the other day that they're not going to change their business style, whether it's succeeding or not.
Yeah.
Just straight up like, yeah, we don't care. We're doing it this way.
Right.
Or things like the always online stuff and the Animus database, or even things like, honestly, some of their, and we talked about this in a previous video, some of their ways that they said things about this game, like history is really important to us and this and that, and then they're getting basic things wrong that they could get right. Details. I feel like those are more credible criticisms. Those are things where it's, you're holding them to something they said. Even if I have said before, I don't take a lot of history in Assassin's Creed seriously. Some of it is, but a lot of it is them embellishing, changing things, going their own way, whatever. It's been that forever. When they're saying these things, if they say them and then you're like, well, you said it, that has more merit to me than this. This to me is, I just wonder if this is not something for some groups of people. I don't mean that like racistly,
Right.
But what I mean is, if there was a game that handled, and it's the only other example I can think of as high profile as Christianity, because these are two of the biggest religions in the world. Christianity and Islam. If there was a game that handled Islam the way that they handled Christianity, I don't think that the response would be as charitable as it was. I think there would be a lot more outcry, about going after a major Islamic leader.
Yeah.
And doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there would be a lot more outcry. And I think they know that. I think that's why they haven't done that. And that's fine. Like they just know maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we just shouldn't do this topic.
Mm-hmm.
While it shouldn't be exempt, in my opinion, I feel like they know, hey, this probably wouldn't be met well. It's just probably not worth it. What's the point? What are we going to get out of it? Whereas I think they knew that with the history around Catholicism and the abuses of power that are pretty public in Western society history books now, they knew that they could talk about Catholicism the way they did, and it would be fine. And my point is, you said this earlier, I think that they're not used to working with this group of people and their history, and I wonder if what is okay to other people, and I personally think should have some universal, is this okay or not, maybe this just isn't something that you want to tackle with this group of people because it's so important to them that whether I agree or not, it's not worth it. And that's kind of something I'm starting to think about the future of this series in Japan in general is this setting might not be worth dealing with as a Western developer. Maybe leave it to the Japanese because they have a lot more pride and nationalism and belief in their own country than most Western countries do. That is it really worth dealing with the constant, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, when this has either always been bad and it's always been done, or it has always been done and it's fiction. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know if it's worth... Is it worth it for Western developers? Is it worth it for the Japanese? It's clearly stressing out a lot of people there. Is it worth it to tackle in the art? Like, is anything being gained from this game? It doesn't really seem like anyone's excited for this game. It just seems like a whole big, no matter what is done, who's happy with it? On any side.
Yeah.
No one's happy.
Well, and a good comparison to this game I think of is Ghost of Tsushima. Now, Ghost of Tsushima has been met with the complete opposite reaction. It's been praised for its historical accuracy. It's been praised for its inclusion and its representation of Japanese culture. It's been praised, for pretty much everything, gameplay, what a story, everything. And it's a great game. It's a fantastic game. But you can also, the game's also pretty destructive of the environment around you, too. So my thing is, are we really this upset that you can be destructive of this environment? Or is it kind of like what you're saying? Is it maybe this group of people just isn't used to this style of game?
Right, because their people don't do it.
Yeah. And
in Japan, you have a history of trying to not rock the boat, which is not bad.
Right.
I mean, that's something that they do is I was reading about this, I'm not Japanese, but even stuff like a lot of people who are just completely atheistic will still adhere to a lot of religious principles and traditions because otherwise you're seen as disrespectful. Even things like that. These are very important to people, even if they don't believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a part of the societal fabric.
It's part of their culture, and
and it's not that to me it's off limits for art. I've told you, the things that are sacred to me are not off limits for art.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's lines of being completely disrespectful. Again, mash X to behead Christ as Kratos would be a bit much to me. But I don't think that... I also, a lot of times when art isn't for me, I just don't engage with it.
Yeah, right.
I don't really...
You don't demand it to be changed or censored or anything. You just don't engage with it.
There's very little I demand to be changed and censored. I guess child exploitation, things I would actually consider not art. Illegal things that are pedophilic or something like that, I would demand change.
A certain group of people on Twitter just turned you off right now.
Yeah, the maps.
Yeah.
But at the same time, most things that are art, even if I despise them, I don't demand that they don't exist.
Yeah.
And it does seem like there is a lot of that around this game. And I guess I'm just kind of wondering where that was for the history of the franchise that was never pro-religion.
Right. And this is just something in general that I've always thought about too is, for me, when I see things that are related to me, in certain statues or paintings or things like that, it excites me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for example, like I'm I don't know, German, but if I see like a historical German figure, not the one in the 40s,
okay,
but if I see a historical German figure in like a statue, I'm kind of like, oh, cool.
That's interesting.
You know, like that's interesting. But I've noticed that there's a lot of groups out there that are very protective and very, very, very touchy with how that group is depicted in statuaries and paintings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if things are not perfectly 100% fully accurate, it's bad. We need to take it down. We need to remove it. We need to get rid of it. And it's like, well,
sometimes even if they are, you know, you pointed out,
well, yeah.
I feel like, again, I'm being set up here because this is, again, an Islamic example. There was a depiction in Minnesota mural of Muhammad or whatever, because
it was not Minnesota. That was in the U.S. Supreme Court building.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so in the U.S. Supreme Court building, there is some statuary on the building itself. The architect included a lot of figures throughout history that have created law, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he wanted representation of law for the Supreme Court building.
Throughout humanity.
Yeah. One of the figures is Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
Muhammad created a law system, a very popular law system around the world, historically speaking. So it makes sense. Now, I was reading the other day that there was a Muslim group, I don't remember the name of it, was demanding a few years ago that Muhammad imagery be sandblasted off of it. They wanted it removed. They wanted it gotten rid of. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't like inaccurate or anything. It was just Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily they refused. They said, no, we're not doing that. But my thing was just, why are you so angry that Muhammad is represented here? It's not even offensive. They're not worshiping it, because I understand there's a whole thing around imagery of Muhammad with worshiping and stuff like that.
And a lot of people don't even like imagery of him existing.
Yeah.
Now.
And this was their response. Their response was, this statue is not placed up there for the purpose of worship or anything. It's placed up there for the purpose of representing the historical figure, Muhammad, and his relation to law. But that didn't matter. And it's like, well, aren't you happy that we're representing Muhammad here? It's not inaccurate. It's not an offensive way. It's a respectful way. Why are you angry still? Well, it makes no sense to me.
This, to me, again, we talked about, you and I off the channel talked about Assassin's Creed 3 and some of those Native American things. And they had someone, I believe from the Mohawk tribe, who was on call as a, what would you call it, a consultant for AC3,
right.
Who basically told them, hey, don't depict any ceremonial masks. Depictions of those, even in fiction, are seen as offensive. And I think to us, I think that's something we just don't understand. You know, I think that to us, like, that's something that's not in our culture. But, and I get that. I get there can be differences. And I'm okay with there being differences. However, I don't feel like it's okay to hold things selectively.
Yeah.
To a principle that you don't hold other things to.
Right.
And in the same way that for me, if they had a religion I didn't believe in that was a live religion now, you know, it was live, this mattered to a lot of people. Say there was someone in Buddhism or someone in Hinduism, for example, there's a lot of Hindu believers still, you know, who believe in many gods, and say that there was a god for them, that it was in the next God of War, because it's the only example I can think of where you kill gods.
Right.
They were like, hey, go kill that guy now. To me, I would kind of be like, this is distasteful. You know, this is in poor taste. I don't believe that in that god. I just don't. And that's okay that I don't. But to me, it would still be like, this isn't a very tasteful decision. Like, this is not great. But I don't understand why I can acknowledge that and other people can't. Not to say like I'm the main character here.
Right.
But to me, I don't understand why it's okay to me if my beliefs are critiqued, criticized, whatever. I mean, if you aim it at me personally, then it's one thing, because it's kind of like you don't know me. You don't really exactly have a right to go after me as a person, right?
Yeah.
But if you're just talking about religion and you come out here, and to me the Bible is important, but you say the Bible's fake. The Bible was written by all these people. A lot of them were high on meth, and they were, slinging coke and whores, and they were bad people. They owned slaves, and your God isn't real. I'd just say, okay.
Yeah, right.
You're free to believe what you want. And, if you depicted a game where that religion wasn't real at all, I'd say, okay, it either isn't real in your game world, which is really all they're ever talking about in Assassin's Creed. They're not talking about your world in real life. They're talking about their game world that has elements of real history in it. I wouldn't say, Assassin's Creed is a reflection of real life. Therefore, God is fake. I would just say, okay, well, in this game, this is the belief system, or in this game, this is how it is. The same way in Final Fantasy, when they use Final Fantasy to criticize actually a lot of organized religion, including Japanese spiritualism, they use other stand-ins to do that. And when anime does it, and they use other stand-ins to criticize Japanese spiritualism, because this is something anime creators will do. We talk a lot about anime on one of our other channels if you're interested. That'll be in the description, but anime creators will use either fake characters or Christian characters or other created fiction, whatever, to criticize the precepts and the spiritual standing and the customs of Japan. But they won't do it with the actual spiritualism and concepts of Japan. They will just use a stand-in. It's okay there, because it's not the actual concept. And that to me is where I'm saying these things become complicated depending on who you're dealing with, where it's okay they're criticizing those things, as long as they don't use the thing. And that to me is where it's interesting, where they'll use like something to symbolize that belief, but then still attack it. And that's okay. But this is having that shrine and it's being attacked and it's not okay. Do you kind of see what I'm saying? Where I'm saying that there are a lot of standards around these things that I think people need to realize this is fiction. It's never been pro-religion. There's going to be a lot of problems with this game that are legitimate that I think things like this overshadow, pun intended, with Assassin's Creed Shadows.
Yeah, I got
Well, I just wanted to make sure because I'm sitting next to you. I guess you just have a history of this series being this way, and I'm kind of wondering, did people miss that history?
I think in this specific case, like I said, I think it's just the people that are upset about this, a lot of them didn't play that.
But there were a lot of people online. This did go viral.
Yeah, right.
Like, this was on Twitter, and it went viral.
And I think a lot of those people are just looking for stuff to hate. So they find this and they're like, oh boy, yeah, another thing to hate on Shadows today.
But there's plenty.
And it makes no sense.
But there's plenty of legitimate things. And I think that if you throw everything at the wall on something, we've seen this with political figures in real life, we've seen it with religions, we've seen it with everything. If you see a guy, right, and he is a convicted, like, let's say there's a guy out there, I'm just going to make someone up real quick, and he is known for insider trading and beating his wife. And then you say, oh, well, also, this guy SA'd that person over there, and this guy likes kids, and this guy also, like, murdered the nanny that took care of my kids, and this guy robbed that bank. Now we've bogged down this actual legitimate criticism with, like, 12 red herrings that have nothing to do with the actual valid criticisms of this guy, right?
Yeah.
And we see this all the time. We see it with celebrities, political figures, religious, everything in real life. People will sling around these buzzwords. Racist is one of them, where now it's been watered down to the point where you could say, no, that guy's really racist. And there will be people who'll be like, no, he's not. Even if he is.
Yeah.
Because you've ruined the word. So I feel like when you take criticisms that are invalid and don't have any backing, and you're trying to use them as your criticism, and you're not recognizing the history of just this franchise being this way already, I'm kind of thinking, were you asleep for 200 hours of gameplay for this series? Is this your first game in it? What's going on here? Like, where's the disconnect? Because we're just getting hit with red herrings that I feel like, personally, are going to overshadow the valid criticisms that should be focused on. Because now, if you bring up those valid criticisms, there's going to be a group of hardcore defenders that don't listen to you because they've been hit with so many smoke screens that they're just going to think you're bullshitting them.
Yeah. Well, and also my thing, too, is what's with all these, like, random criticisms of Shadows. I remember when Mirage came out, and pretty much every game before that, it had criticisms, it had haters. You know, Assassin's Creed has pretty much always had haters since Assassin's Creed 3 came out. But I feel like every day I'm just seeing, like, stupid controversies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this game had a Japanese guy stub his toe. It's offensive to Japanese people. And I'm like, what is this criticism? Why are we getting angry about this? You know, when Mirage came out in Valhalla and stuff, I didn't see dumb criticism.
No.
I saw things like, oh, well, this, you know, story element looks dumb, or this, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Or this was poorly written, or this part of the world wasn't expanded on.
I saw stuff like that. I didn't see things like this.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I guess I just don't really get it.
Well, and that's why I think it's watering down the legit criticism.
Exactly.
There's going to be a lot of legitimate criticism. This is a Ubisoft game. Do people forget what Ubisoft is?
Yeah.
You can throw a stone in the direction of a Ubisoft game after 2010, and you're probably going to land in a pile of valid criticisms.
Right. So
I'm kind of wondering why we're focusing on such arbitrary issues.
Yeah.
That I don't think they benefit conversation. And it pisses me off, actually, legitimately, because before we recorded this, I said, I guarantee you there's going to be some idiot who points this as, see, look, they're defending Shadows again. I don't want to defend Shadows. Yeah. I think Shadows deserves a lot of criticism for things. Why don't we make them valid ones?
Right.
Why don't we cover the things that matter?
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess I just don't understand. Do you have any closing thoughts on this?
Not really.
Not really?
No. I'm getting kind of tired of this game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I want to be excited for this, and to be honest, I'll play it, you know, when it comes out.
Sure.
And I am kind of excited. Like, I am actually kind of excited to play it, because I'm excited for a new Assassin's Creed game, but...
Woke.
But my thing is just, like, I'm getting tired of these, like, dumb criticisms. And honestly, I know when the game comes out, it doesn't matter what the game is. The game could be the absolute greatest game ever created, and it could be the greatest game to ever get created.
It won't be. It's Ubisoft.
I know it won't be, but I'm saying it could be, and it'll still get people that just complain incessantly about it online. You know, people that play, like, the first 30 minutes, they're like, I know everything about the game, it's bad. Game bad. Nope, you're stupid. You're not a fan. You're not a real fan here, even though you've played every game in the series. You're not a real fan. I've only played the first 4, and I'm the biggest fan.
I don't even know what real fan means anymore.
It's just like, it's dumb, and it's just, I'm getting tired of these, like, stupid complaints about this that make no sense to me.
Well, and also the tribalism around it. Like, you didn't make the game.
Right.
And neither did they.
It's just like,
this is a piece of art or product, depending on how cynical you are, that you are consuming.
Right.
And you are taking part in, but you didn't make it. So it's weird to me there's people who will feel pride around the game if it does well, who had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And there's people who feel pride around the game if it fails, who had nothing to do with it.
It's like,
this is a game.
Yeah, it's like, just play the game when it comes out, or don't play the game. And maybe if you play the game and you enjoy it, great. If you play the game, you hate it, cool. Or just don't play the game. Like, it doesn't really matter.
I find it weird. There's hours of conversation topics around anger on the game prior to it launching.
Yeah, like, it's not even out.
That's not normal.
Yeah.
That's not a normal thing, that this is such a big deal to people.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Let us know what you think in the comments down below. I'm sure you will. If you enjoyed this video, you want to leave, like, subscribe. I appreciate that very much. Answering the question of the day means a lot. We recently actually did an Amazon affiliate link, so if you decide to buy anything through that, we do get some kind of commission on there, so we appreciate that. We also have our own store, CosmoMoney.shop, where we sell coasters, keychains, trays, and more from recycled paper, from comics, magazines, manga, pamphlets, all kinds of things that are damaged. They're not able to be sold. We take some of that art, we actually transform it in a new medium into new art, and then we recycle the rest, and hope you enjoy it. So, hope you have a fantastic day. Discount code DJAY123 over there. 10% off your first order. That is also our Fortnite code. As always, everyone, stay shway. Now let's go beat up the Pope.